Hey Tube, what's up? So today we're going to be talking about a deck that I told you we would be covering in my last string of videos that I posted last week, and that is the Deity Tribe, Deity Dragon Tribe deck profile for Buddy Fight. Now, there's still a lot of things that I wanted to do with this deck, so the deck profile that you will be seeing in this video particularly, it's not going to be that way for a while, for a long while. Reason being is this deck is getting a lot more support. If you've been watching the Buddy Fight Ace anime, then you should know this because this is the same deck that is used by Yuga. Now, the only thing that I have a problem with this deck is there are some people who are the new support in general is what's giving Garga his main push. This happens all the time. The first wave 2-3 sets of a deck, you're getting a genuine idea of what Bushiroad is wanting to do with the deck. Then when about 2 or 3 sets pass, you get this flux of support that just takes the deck to the next level and a level above that. It just increases its consistency, it increases its output of damages and resource and all that. And there are some people that are very angry with the support that Garga is getting. And I still don't know if it's going to be considered one of the top meta decks currently. Even with the new form of Gargantua Dragon coming out, which is Deity Gargantua Dragon, which basically this ability is if you use him as your buddy monster, you get to use all other Deity Dragon tribe monsters from other flags. And currently, he's going to be there's a Star Dragon World one coming out. There's a Darkness Dragon World one coming out. There's a Katana World and a Magic World one already. But there's going to be other forms coming out soon. And usually you couldn't use, say, the Katana World one unless you were playing the Katana version of the deck. Well, with this new form, you'll be able to use whichever ones you want, which I think it's a pretty cool distinction because the last deck that Gao used, was the Thunder Empire, when their flag allowed you to use Thunder Empire cards that from whatever world they may be. So you could have a deck specifically, like if you saw my last Thunder Empire deck, there's like 8 different worlds worth of cards in there. I like how they did it here. I'm glad they didn't just create a new flag just for Yuga because that would have been really stupid. So I'm glad they kind of did an alteration of it. Now, here's the problem that this presents. Now, with Thunder Empire, their one major flaw, if you can, when they were at their peak, before Loud Voice got hit, before, when they were the top dog, because they just had so much ability to generate advantage, search out their cards, and they had really good spells like Loud Voice and Fighter's Oath, and these cards were not touched yet by the list. You had only the Thunder Empire card pool to work with. That was the one downside to that flag. If you played the Thunder Empire flag, you could only use Thunder Empire cards. Most flags, people take it for granted, that last little part where it says if you're using a Dragon World flag, it says you can use Dragon World cards and generic cards. On the Thunder Empire flag, it just said you could use Thunder Empire cards and not generic. So that took out some possibilities for possible side deck options that Thunder Empire had. Garga, on the other hand, he gets to take kind of the best version that Thunder Empire had when they got their own flag and were able to use cards from every world while also having access to the generic world because they're still going to have a Dragon World flag, so that's really good for them. But in the same breath, the people who are getting maybe a little bent out of shape about this, you really shouldn't be, for one major reason, guys. This this season of Buddy Fight pretty much encompasses Yuga, and his dad is Gao. We all saw how Bushiroad pushed support for Gao. All of his cards had cheaper costs, they got their abilities easier, and sometimes they just got them because they were there. Um, so they were going to do the same thing with Yuga. Um, Now, I originally wasn't going to build Gargantua Dragon because I kind of stopped watching the anime for a little bit. I just fell behind, and I recently been catching back up. And I got to admit, I do like the character of Garga. He's different in ways, but similar to Bots with a little bit of drum. I mean, he's an interesting character. The art style's cool. I like the idea behind the deck. It's it's a little different from what they've done with the main character's buddy, um, because I don't know where this stacks up, as far as maybe by the player base's perspective, like how good the deck is in general, um, because there are so many different ways that you can build the Dragon Deity tribe. So it's going to be interesting to see how people build the deck. Like I said, I'll get into this deck profile and I'll show you what I have. It's going to change drastically because of all the new support that's coming out. Um, so you will expect to see an updated version of this sometime, down the road. So here we go. So it's a Dragon World deck, and we have the Yuga flag here because why not? And obviously, our buddy monster is going to be Gargantua Dragon. Very, very simple. Pay a gauge, put the top card of your deck into the soul. He has double attack and soul guard. After he attacks, you can call any other Dragod monster from your hand on top of him without paying its call cost, and by using the G-Evo ability, which is pretty much what this deck pushes and uses to win its games. So, along with that being our buddy, we play 4 copies of him. I didn't bother getting. I was originally going to replace these and get other secret forms, but since he's getting another form, I don't see the point of doing that, because Deity Gargantua Dragon is better. He has better stats, he has a better effect, and he allows you to splash the other Gargantua forms into the deck from other worlds. But same card, just different skin. So 4 copies of Gargantua Dragon, and currently 3 copies of Daybreak Roar Gargantua Dragon. So this one's a little different. You still pay 1 gauge, and he gets the top card of the deck into his soul. Instead of having double attack, they swap that out for the move ability. He still has soul guard, obviously. But when he attacks, if you have if you have another Deity Dragon tribe on the field, you get to draw a card. So, yeah, he's okay. Because the way this deck will be is once the deck has Deity Gargantua Dragon, you're just going to play 4 of that with your buddy. You won't need multiple copies because there's so many ways they're coming out with a lot of ways to search him, so you won't have to dig too deep for him. But so next, we'll just go into the rest of the monsters here. First, we'll cover the other G-Evo targets that this deck currently is holding. 3 Blast Mode Gargantua Dragons. Size 2, 10,000 power, 3 crits, and 7k defense. He has a call cost of 2 gauge, and you get to put the top card of your deck into the soul. When he enters the field on the first turn, he gets +1 crit. But if he enters the field by G-Evo for this turn, his attacks can't be nullified, and the damage that he deals cannot be reduced. And he has double attack and soul guard. So if he enters the field by G-Evo, he becomes a 10,000 power 4 crit monster that swings twice, and the damage can't be nullified, and it can't be reduced. So he can deal 8 damage by himself. So very, very good. 2 copies of Sonic Mode. Sonic Mode is just your generic defensive form of Garga that you're usually going to call out during your opponent's turn. He has 7,000 power, 2 crits, and 10,000 defense. He has a call cost of 2 gauge, and you put the top card of your deck into the soul. This card on the field, it cannot be returned to your hand, and its abilities cannot be nullified by your opponent. And then when this card enters the field, you gain 2 life. If it enters the field by G-Evo, you'll gain 2 life and draw 2 cards. So he gives you some way to gain some life, gain some more hand cards, and he also has the abilities Move, Counterattack, and Soul Guard. So you can stick him in the center with 10,000 defense, and he'll have Soul Guard and be able to counterattack on your opponents. So very good card. Then we play 2 copies of Gargantua Dragon Cyclone Mode. He has a call cost of 3 gauge, and you put the top card of the deck into the soul. He cannot be rested by your opponent's card effects. When he enters the field, you get to destroy a monster on your opponent's field. And then if he enters the field by G-Evo, you get to destroy a monster on your opponent's field. So if he enters the field by G-Evo, you effectively can destroy 2 monsters, or 1 monster twice. He has the abilities Move, Triple Attack, and Soul Guard. And then lastly, for the G-Evo, we play 1 copy. Currently, I have 1 copy of Double Buddy Mode in here. Now, Double Buddy Mode, he is an interesting card. I don't know if he's going to be in here for very long. He has a call cost of 2 gauge, and then you put the top card of your deck into his soul. His ability G-Evo, when he enters the field during the attack phase, you get to call 1 Dragod monster from your hand without paying its call cost, and that card becomes a size 0 until it leaves the field. So you can say, for instance, call this and then call Cyclone Mode or any of your other modes and make him a size 0 and have 2 attacking forms on the field, essentially. He has double attack and Soul Guard, so he is a nice one of, but I don't think he'll be in the deck for very long. Next, the rest of the monsters that are in the deck, kind of like the supporters. Of course, we're playing 4 copies of Garcat. Garcat, when he enters play, if you have another, I'm gonna just start saying DDT, guys, because Deity Dragon Tribe is getting tired of saying that. So when he enters the field, and you have another DDT on your field, you get to put the top card of your deck into the gauge and draw a card. I will say one thing that really made me decide to build this deck is Garcat. If you watch the anime, all 3 members of the Gar trio, the cat, the dog, and the bird, they're so entertaining, and I think they're in ways more entertaining than Garga at times. And Garcat is by far my favorite, just the things he says when he comes out, and the scenes he's in. He's just a very fun character, and so Garcat is just fun. So I've built this deck almost solely on the reason just because I love Garcat, but I love Garcat. Speaking of the other members, we play 2 copies of Gardog. Gardog, when he enters play, if you have another DDT on the field, it lets you gauge 2. I don't play any copies of the first Garbird because he's just not really that good. Now the new version of Garbird that's coming out is broke as crap. It's like Serious Garbird or something like that. But he's broke. You'll see him in a later video, but this is pretty good. Gardog, he enters play and he gives you 2 gauge, so he's a good card. Then we play 3 copies of Lanz Gardragon. I think that's how you say that. He is a pretty interesting card. He's a size 2 monster with 6,000 power, 1 crit, and 1k defense. He has a call cost of 1 gauge, and then you place the top card of your deck into his soul. If you have and his abilities are, if you have a Dragod monster on your field, this card's size is reduced by 1, so he becomes a size 1 when he's sitting next to any of your Guard Dragons. And then his other skill is all Dragods on your field gain Penetrate, and they cannot be rested by your opponent's card effects. So this is a very good card. It prevents your opponent from resting your units so they can't attack them. They are still susceptible to cards like Drago Trap that prevents them from attacking, but it does give it some more protection. and there are some worlds where their only way to stop creatures like that is by resting them, so this guy pretty much gets around that. Um, then to make this card even better, it has the triple attack ability plus Soul Guard. He only has one crit, but he has 6k power and he can attack 3 times. That's a pretty good card. So this is a very, very good card and almost a staple in DDT decks. And for the last monster, currently I'm playing 2 copies of Guard Dragon Marquise the V. He is a size 3 monster with 8,000 power, 2 crits, and 5k defense. You pay 2 gauge, and then you place a card from your drop zone into his soul. And then his first ability is, if you have a Dragon monster on your field, his size is reduced by 2, so he becomes a size 1, so he can be next to all of your Guard Dragons. And then his other ability is, when this card attacks, you get to put 1 monster from your drop zone into your hand. So you can take any monster in your drop zone, put him back into your hand, and just reuse it again. And to make it even better, he has the double attack ability. So when he swings both times on your turn, you get to add 2 monsters from your drop zone back into your hand. So what's really, really cool is, say you have your Gargantua Dragon here, because you can only G-Evo. I've watched a lot of matches and seen people's deck profiles just for ideas and how other people are playing the deck, and I've noticed that what some people do is they'll attack with their Guard Dragon and then they'll attack with other things and then G-Evo. Keep in mind, Guard Dragon can only use the G-Evo after he battles. So you can say, like, if you don't have, say, like, I wanted to go into, where the heck is it? Say I wanted to go into a blast mode, and I didn't have a blast mode in my hand, but there was one in my drop zone. So I could call this, and I could swing, and I could put this into my hand, and then I could swing, and then say I could, like, retrieve, another monster, and then I could attack with my Guard Dragon, and then I could G-Evo into blast mode. So this is a pretty good card. I will definitely explore the possibility of keeping him in the deck, because as a 2-of, he's a pretty good card. And he has 8,000 power, 2 crits, and 5k defense. And for him dropping to a size 1 next to Guard Dragon, that's pretty good stats for a size 1. Okay, so that's all the monsters. Now for items, we only play 4. And the reason for that is we do have draw power and a way to search them. At the moment, I'm playing 2 copies of Deity Dragon Sword Gardius. 6,000 power, 2 crit. Equip cost is pay 1 gauge. When a Dragon monster on your field attacks, you destroy a monster on your opponent's field, and if you do, deal the damage to your opponent. It has a good effect, but the one small problem, almost every major deck out there has a way to protect their monsters from destruction, or the monster just has that ability built into them. So I really don't see this as a very good item for the deck for, like, longevity's sake. I see it as just filler. I don't have any Gar Blades, the very first one, the one that gets double attack if you have Gargantua on the field, or a Dragod monster on the field. But the new item that's coming out, Gar Saber, is going to be the main item in the deck. But until then, this is really just kind of there. Now, the better of the 2 items I play is 2 copies of DD Dragon Sword Garcrease. This item is much better, in my opinion. It has 5,000 power, 2 crits. Its equip cost is pay 1 gauge and 1 life. If you have a Dragod monster on your field, this card and all Dragod on your field get plus 4k, and they cannot be destroyed, and their abilities cannot be nullified by your opponent's card effects. So it gives your Guard Dragons more protection, it gives them a little power boost, and just regular Gargantua Dragon, it makes him go from 7,000 to 11,000, which is pretty good. 11,000 is going to get over almost everything out there. So that's it's a pretty good item. For spells, first is our 4 copies of Gargantua Switch Mode. This is one of Yuga's main combo cards, and it's one of the best cards in the deck because it gives you the ability to G-Evo with counter speed. So you can do it on your opponent's turn, or you can do it on your turn if you want to. Say your opponent does find a way to stop you from attacking. Say, for instance, you go into, uh, you know, you go into another Gargantua Dragon and your opponent uses Drago Trap and says, okay, now that monster can no longer attack. Well, you can use Gargantua Switch Mode and G-Evo, and then you can attack again because that new monster wasn't affected by Drago Trap. So it's a very, very good card. And you get to call it without paying its call cost, which is, in reality, really insane. So this is there's going to be a new form of this. There's going to be another form of Switch Mode. It's I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head at this moment, but it pretty much is a card that's like Gargantua Dragon. It can be used with other flags, so you can use it in your Katana World and Magic World variants of the deck, but it gives you the ability to use it in all three, and it's a little bit better than this card in ways. It's one of those things I'll get further into once I have the deck finished. I can see play probably 3 of each, honestly, just because this deck is designed to pretty much OTK at any moment. That's the way that Gargantua Dragon decks are pretty much built, or at least that's the way I view them. 4 copies of Deity Green Dragon Shield. They basically took Gao's Green Dragon Shield and said, let's make it broke as hell. You can only cast this card during an attack on your opponent's turn if you have no monster on your center and you have a DDT on your field. Nullify the attack and gain 3 life. So Green Dragon Shield basically went from negate the attack and gain a life to negate the attack. Do you have a DDT on the field? Yes, you do. Gain 3 life. So the only downside to this card is if you have no monsters on the field and no item equipped, you can't cast it. But there's going to be very few rare cases where that is a thing to worry about. So, and then 2 copies of Fighting Emperor Dragon Shield. This is a pretty good one too, actually. It's you may only cast this card during an attack on your opponent's turn, and if you have a DDT on the field, counter, nullify the attack. If you have a Dragod monster on your field, put the top 2 cards of your deck into the gauge, and you gain 2 life. So this is, if you have a Dragod monster on your field and you cast this, you essentially get 2 gauge and 2 life. So it's like having a blue Dragon Shield and a green Dragon Shield times 2 clicking for you. So it's really, really good. This I could see becoming the more dominant shield over this, simply just because with the new build and this deck in general, you must maintain gauge. It's not as it doesn't have the gauge excel currently that Fifth Omni or Thunder Empire has, or even Sun Dragons for that matter, because all 3 of those decks were able to massively gain gauge. DDT, as of right now, that's probably their one weakness, is just keeping a strong gauge. They are getting another card soon that is going to help with that some, but it doesn't have as many ways to gain gauge as the other past Dragon World decks. 2 copies of Dragod Shine. This is a pretty good card. It's just a fetch and go get card. You pay 1 life, and then you get to use one of the following 2 effects, and you can only cast this card once per turn. You can either put a DDT item from your deck into your hand and then shuffle your deck, or you can put 2 DDT monsters with different card names from your drop zone into the hand. So it's just a simple... this is a good card. I imagine this will probably still be played at 2 in the next build with 4 items, because by having this in the deck, you're essentially playing 6 items, because if you draw this, you get your items. So only 2 copies of Gar Oracle. This is a card that I see a lot of people max out on. The deck already is going to have so much search and draw power as it is. You don't want to play just pure draw power on top of draw power, because you'll thin your deck so quick. And the card can eventually just be dead. But you can only cast this if you have a DDT on your field. You pay 1 gauge, and then you get to draw 2 cards. But if you have a Dragod monster on your field, you also gain 2 life. So So 1 gauge, and you get two to draw 2 cards and gain 2 life if you have one of your Gar Dragons on the field. 2 copies of Gar Spirit. This card will not be in the final variant. I can almost guarantee you that. I'm not really that crazy about this card. Um, it is a counter card. You get to put this into the soul of a Dray God on your field. The Dray God with this card in its soul gets plus 3,000 power and penetrate. And then if you have 6 life or less, it gets +1 critical. The reason this card is really not necessarily needed is because you have Lon's Guard Dragon, which already gives all your Guard Dragons and Dray Gods penetrate. So this card will be taken out and replaced with something else. Currently, I have 2 copies of Gar Sagan in here. This is another card that will be replaced with other things. It's not a bad card by any stretch if you were going for a more budget-friendly version of the deck. If it's kind of like another version of Bot's X-Link. Bot's X-Link, the card that if you attacked 3 times during your turn, you got to look at the top 3 of cards of your deck, put 1 into your hand and the other 2 into your gauge. This is a little different. If you've attacked at least 3 times on your turn, link attacks only counting as 1, you get to draw 2 cards and gain 2 life. So it is a good card. It's just it can be replaced with something just better. And then lastly is 2 copies of Deity Gargantua Punisher. I will say I absolutely love the art they went with Deity Gargantua Punisher. It looks absolutely brilliant, and it's it's better than his dad's First Impact. Ironically, you can only cast this card if your opponent has 5 life or less. Neither you nor your opponent has a monster in their center, and if you have a Dragod monster on the field, pay 2 gauge and deal 5 damage to your opponent. The damage cannot be nullified and it cannot be reduced. So they basically took Gargantua Punisher, they cut its cost in half, but added the stipulation you must have a Dragod monster on the field, and they upped the damage by 1. So very, very good card. This will probably go to 3, I'm thinking, in the next build, just because it'll help with the draw power and the search power the deck will have. It will just help add to your possibility to OTK. So that is the current build for DDT at the moment. It is a very fun deck, so if you are looking for a buddy fight deck that is a lot of fun to play and is pretty high up in the meta, or at least higher towards the top part of it. Like I said, I'm not really sure where I would place this deck. Like, if you were saying, like, okay, these are the top 4 meta decks, I don't know if it would be in there yet. Maybe with all the new support, it definitely will be. I imagine eventually it will be, just because it is a protagonist deck. I just don't know if it's there yet. But it is a very, very fun deck to play. It has a lot of fun cards, and it takes fun of a very fun skill to use. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. I know it will not be it's maybe not be completely up to date, but the reason for that is I don't see the point of using the current support to update it until the new stuff drops, because it's just better. So once I have all the new support for this deck, I will be doing another updated deck profile on this, which then it will be a Deity Gargantua Dragon deck and not just Gargantua Dragon. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you leave any thoughts or suggestions or comments down in the comments below. I always read all the comments, good and bad, obviously. And then make sure if there is another deck you want to see me cover, feel free to suggest it down below. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.